The blade is finished, or so it looks. The fire has softened it. The hammer has given it a shape. Hours of heat, thousands of blows. Everything the steel will ever be is finally there, glowing on the anvil. And now the blacksmith does something that makes no sense at all. He lifts the blade he has spent all day creating, carries it to a barrel of cold, black water, and plunges it in. A scream of steam. A shock so violent, the metal cries out. And here is what they don't tell you. Sometimes, in that instant, the blade cracks. Everything the fire built, everything the hammer shaped, destroyed in less than a second. The smith knows this. He knows the risk. And he plunges it in anyway. So let me ask you something. Why would he gamble everything he made on one sudden moment of cold? And when that moment comes for you, because it is coming, what decides whether it sets you or shatters you? Hold that. We are going to earn it. 23 centuries ago, there was a merchant from Cyprus. His name was Zeno, and by every measure his world had, Zeno had won. He came from money. He traded in one of the most precious cargoes of the ancient world. The purple dye of Phoenicia. A color so rare, so ruinously expensive that kings wore it and almost no one else could. Picture him, a man in his prime, wealth in the hold beneath his feet, his fortune moving wherever he moved. One good voyage from being richer still, and somewhere on the water between Phoenicia and Greece, the sea decided otherwise. We do not know the storm's name. We do not know the hour. We only know what was true by the end of it. The ship was gone. The cargo, gone. The fortune Zeno had spent his life building, on the seabed, unreachable, as lost as if it had never existed. One day, one plunge, and everything the fire of his ambition had built, everything the hammer of his work had shaped, gone. He washed up near Athens with, as far as the story goes, little more than the life in his body, not ruined slowly, with time to adjust, ruined suddenly, the way the quench comes for steel, no warning, no negotiation, just heat, and then cold. Now, what happens next comes down to us from ancient biographers, writing long after, so hold it gently, but hold it, because it survives, for a reason. They say Zeno wandered into Athens with nowhere to be. A man whose entire identity, merchant, trader, man of fortune, had drowned with his ship. And at some point he drifted into a bookshop, maybe for shelter, maybe just for somewhere to stand. The bookseller was reading aloud. The words were about Socrates, a man who had owned almost nothing, feared almost nothing, and needed almost nothing. And something in the ruined merchant went very still. He listened for a long time. Then he asked the bookseller one question, and it may be the most important question anyone has ever asked in a shop. Where can I find a man like that? At that exact moment, so the story goes, a philosopher named Crates happened to be passing the doorway. The bookseller pointed, "Follow him." And Zeno did. The merchant never went back to sea. Years later, he began teaching on a painted porch in Athens, a stoa in Greek. The people who gathered there were named for that porch. We call them the Stoics. The entire philosophy, the one Seneca wrote in exile, the one Epictetus lived in chains, every word of it traces back to this. One ruined man, one shipwreck, one question in a bookshop. Zeno said something about that shipwreck years later. It is recorded by the old biographers, so take the wording gently, but the meaning is his. I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck. Sit with how strange that sentence is. Not, I recovered from the shipwreck. Not, I survived it. Prosperous. The single worst day of his life, reclassified as the most valuable. Because here, is what the sudden cold does, that nothing else can. The fire teaches you, slowly. The hammer shapes you, gradually. But everything they give you stays soft, right up until the moment it is tested by shock. A shape that has never been through the plunge is a shape that can still be lost, comfortable, promising, and unproven at the exact point that matters. The quench is the moment the softness ends. And here is the unsettling part. From the outside, no one can tell which blades will survive it. Not the smith, not the steel, not until the water. Now come forward to us, because we have organized our entire world around one promise, that the plunge will never come. Insurance for the ship, backups for the backups, a plan for every storm. We have engineered a life where nothing is ever supposed to be lost suddenly, and still it comes. The phone call, the diagnosis, the redundancy email sent at 4 p.m. on a Friday. The person who was there and then is not. No warning, no negotiation, just heat and then cold. And here is the irony we have forgotten. The glass screen in your hand right now, the one you may be watching this on, survives being dropped for one reason. Someone shocked it, on purpose. Heated it, then cooled it so suddenly that the surface locked solid under permanent tension. Engineers call it tempering. The smith would call it the quench. We build our devices to survive the sudden shock, and our lives, never to meet one. And because we built our lives on the promise that this moment would never arrive, we meet it with the one response guaranteed to break us. We call it the end of the plan, the end of the identity, the end of who we were. Zeno stood on a shore with his entire life on the seabed, and what he found in that cold was not an ending. It was the only moment strong enough to show him what he actually was, once everything he had was gone. So let us go back to the barrel, to the blade plunging into the black water, the scream of steam. Remember the question. What decides whether the sudden cold sets you or shatters you? Here is the answer the smith has always known. The quench decides nothing. It reveals. The blade that cracks in the water was always going to crack. The flaw was already in the metal, hidden, waiting. The cold did not create it. The cold found it. And the blade that survives, the cold locks in everything the fire and the hammer gave it. In 1 second, the shape becomes permanent. The softness ends, the hardness stays. Same barrel, same water, same shock. The difference was never the crisis. The difference was what the metal was made of by the time the crisis came. That is why the fire mattered. That is why every blow mattered. Not for their own sake, but because they were deciding in advance what the cold would find in you. You do not become someone in the moment everything is lost. You discover, in one sudden, freezing instant, who all those quiet years were making you. Zeno lost everything in one plunge, and the cold did not find a flaw. It found a man the fire had already been forging. He simply had not met him yet. So, when your plunge comes, and it is coming, it will not ask if you are ready. It will only reveal whether you are. And if the water finds a crack in you, hear this part carefully. Watch what the smith does with broken steel. He does not throw it away. He carries it back to the fire and begins the forging again. A crack was never proof that you were worthless, only proof that you were not finished. The fire is still there. It has never stopped burning. I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck. The fire made you willing. The hammer made you a shape. The quench made it permanent. But a hard blade is not yet a useful one. Hardness without refinement is just a heavy piece of steel. What comes next is slower, quieter, almost invisible. The long grinding that turns hard metal into something that can actually cut. That is the edge, and that is where we go next.